My name is Darlene. I'm 59 years old and a retired elementary school teacher from Portland. Tonight I was sitting in a fancy restaurant, celebrating my son Jacob's big promotion alongside his wife Amelia. Everything seemed perfect until my phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. The message read, "Get up and go, now, don't say anything to your son." I stared at my screen, heart pounding, confused and scared. Something told me I needed to trust this warning. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever received a mysterious message that changed your life. Jacob has always been my pride and joy. As my only child, we developed an especially close bond after my husband Robert passed away from a sudden heart attack when Jacob was just 12 years old. Overnight, I became both mother and father to a grieving boy while processing my own loss. Those early years were tremendously difficult, but they forged an unbreakable connection between us. I worked extra hours at the elementary school where I taught third grade, often taking on summer school and after-school programs to provide for us. Every dollar I earned went toward giving Jacob opportunities. Despite our financial struggles, Jacob thrived academically. He had his father's brilliant mind for mathematics and technology, winning science fairs, and eventually earning a scholarship to study computer engineering at university. Throughout his childhood and teenage years, it was just the two of us against the world. I attended every soccer game, academic competition, and parent-teacher conference. We had Sunday movie nights with homemade popcorn and holiday traditions that helped keep our little family strong. I watched with such pride as he graduated with honors and landed his first job at a promising tech startup. 3 years ago, Jacob called me sounding more excited than I had heard him in years. "Mom, I met someone," he said. Her name was Amelia, a marketing specialist who had joined his company. According to Jacob, she was brilliant, having graduated from an impressive university with top marks. When I finally met her at dinner the following month, I understood why Jacob was so smitten. Amelia was strikingly beautiful, with long auburn hair and piercing blue eyes. Beyond her physical appearance, she was articulate and charming, asking thoughtful questions about my teaching career and Jacob's childhood. Their relationship progressed quickly. Within a year, Jacob proposed with a diamond ring that I suspected cost more than his monthly salary. The wedding was beautiful, though unusually small. Amelia claimed her parents had passed away years ago, and she was estranged from her remaining relatives. I found it odd that not a single person from her side attended, not even a childhood friend. But Jacob seemed so happy that I pushed my concerns aside. Last summer, I retired after 35 years of teaching. The school threw a wonderful party, and both Jacob and Amelia attended. It was during this celebration that Jacob whispered to me that he was being considered for a major promotion at his company, one that would involve leading an entire division of software development. 2 months later, he called with the news that he had gotten the position, along with a substantial salary increase. "Let's celebrate," I suggested. "My treat. We will go to that new restaurant downtown that you have been wanting to try." Jacob agreed enthusiastically, saying that he and Amelia had wonderful news to share as well. My heart leapt at the thought they might be expecting my first grandchild. As I prepared for our dinner celebration, I reflected on how fortunate I was. My son had a successful career, a beautiful wife, and possibly a baby on the way. What more could a mother want? Yet there was a small voice of concern I had been trying to silence. Over the past few months, I had noticed subtle changes in Jacob. He called less frequently, seemed tired during our conversations, and occasionally made references to financial stress despite his new position. There were other things too. The few times I had visited their apartment, Amelia seemed to control the conversation, often answering questions directed at Jacob. When financial topics arose, she would quickly change the subject or make a joke about Jacob being terrible with money. Despite his engineering precision in every other area of life, I noticed how his eyes would often seek her approval before he spoke, a habit he had never displayed before. But mothers often worry too much, don't they? I told myself I was being overprotective, that all newlyweds have adjustment periods. Jacob was a grown man making his own choices. And Amelia, despite my occasional concerns, had made my son happy. That was what mattered most. As I selected my outfit for the celebration dinner, I pushed away my lingering doubts and focused on the joy of the evening ahead. My son had achieved something remarkable in his career and possibly had even more wonderful news to share. Nothing was going to spoil this special night for us. The restaurant Jacob had chosen was certainly impressive. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, and the soft lighting created a warm, intimate atmosphere, despite the spaciousness of the dining area. The maitre d' led us to a corner table with a beautiful view of the city lights beginning to twinkle as sunset approached. Jacob looked handsome in his new tailored suit, though I immediately noticed the dark circles under his eyes. "The new position has been demanding," he explained when I commented on his tired appearance, "but worth every late night." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes the way his smiles usually did. Amelia, by contrast, was radiant. Her dress appeared to be designer, something far more expensive than anything I had seen her wear previously. A diamond tennis bracelet I didn't recognize sparkled on her wrist, and her matching earrings caught the light with every movement of her head. "What a beautiful bracelet," I commented as we settled into our seats. "Jacob surprised me with it last week," she replied, touching it fondly. "A little celebration gift for his promotion." I glanced at Jacob, whose smile tightened slightly. The bracelet looked extraordinarily expensive for what Amelia had described as a little gift, especially given his comments about financial stress during our last phone conversation. Our server arrived with menus and a wine list. Jacob ordered a bottle of champagne, insisting that tonight was special and worth celebrating properly. As we perused the menu, with its impressive array of gourmet options, the conversation flowed pleasantly. Amelia asked about my garden, which had become my retirement project, while Jacob shared amusing anecdotes about his new team members. After we placed our orders, Jacob's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned slightly. "I'm so sorry. This is from the development team. I need to take this. Excuse me for just a moment." He stood and walked toward the restaurant entrance, his phone pressed to his ear. Left alone with Amelia, I felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Her smile remained, but her eyes took on a calculating quality I hadn't noticed before. "Jacob has been working so hard," I said, attempting to maintain the pleasant conversation. "I hope he is able to find some balance with this new position." "Oh, he will," Amelia replied, taking a sip of her water. "Once we get our finances sorted, I've been telling him he should consider stepping back a bit." I tilted my head, confused by her comment. Finances sorted? I thought the promotion came with a significant raise. Something flickered across her face so quickly I almost missed it. "Oh, it did," she said smoothly. "But we have big plans, property investments primarily. Jacob mentioned his trust fund is finally becoming accessible next month, didn't he?" The trust fund. My late husband had set aside a substantial sum for Jacob to receive on his 33rd birthday, just a few weeks away. We rarely discussed it, as I had always encouraged Jacob to make his own way, rather than waiting for his inheritance. I was surprised that Amelia would bring it up so casually. "He hasn't mentioned anything specific," I replied carefully. Amelia opened her mouth to respond but stopped as Jacob returned to the table. "Sorry about that," he said, sliding back into his seat. "Just a quick question about tomorrow's presentation." The champagne arrived, and Jacob proposed a toast to his promotion and exciting times ahead. As we clinked glasses, I noticed how Amelia's eyes lingered on his watch, another expensive item I hadn't seen before. The conversation shifted to house hunting. Apparently, they had been looking at properties well above what I would have expected them to afford, even with Jacob's new salary. We found this amazing place in Westlake Hills. Amelia gushed. 5 bedrooms, a pool, and the most incredible kitchen you have ever seen. Sounds wonderful, I responded, trying to keep the surprise from my voice. Though that seems like a lot of house for just the two of you. Well, about that. Jacob began reaching for Amelia's hand. We were hoping to share some news tonight. My heart leapt. A grandchild after all. But before Jacob could continue, I felt my phone vibrate in my purse. Normally, I would never check my phone during such an important dinner, but something compelled me to glance discreetly at the screen. An unknown number had sent a text message. Get up and go, now. Don't say anything to your son. I nearly gasped aloud, my hands suddenly trembling. Who would send such a message? Was this a prank? A mistake? I looked up at Jacob and Amelia, trying to determine if either had noticed my reaction. Jacob was signaling the waiter for more bread, while Amelia was watching me with an intensity that made me uneasy. Did she know about the text? Was she somehow involved? My thoughts raced as I tried to make sense of the situation. My phone vibrated again. The same number. This is not a joke. Trust me. Leave now. I'm in the parking lot. I felt cold all over. Something was terribly wrong. I studied Jacob, looking for any sign that he might be in danger. He seemed tired, but otherwise normal. Then I looked at Amelia, really looked at her, and noticed how she was watching my reaction, how her hand possessively covered Jacob's on the table, how the warmth in her eyes didn't match her smile. In that moment, I had to make a decision. Ignore the text and continue with dinner, potentially putting Jacob at risk if the warning was legitimate. Or trust my instincts, which were screaming that something wasn't right. Are you okay, Mom? Jacob asked, noticing my expression. You look pale suddenly. I forced a smile. Actually, I'm not feeling very well. I think I might need some fresh air. What's wrong? Concern filled Jacob's voice. I can drive you home. No. I said quickly, remembering the text's warning not to say anything to my son. It's probably just something I ate for lunch, disagreeing with me. I think I'll just take a quick walk and then grab a taxi home if I'm not feeling better. Are you sure? Jacob half rose from his seat. We haven't even gotten our entrees yet. I'm sure. Please stay and enjoy your dinner. We can celebrate properly another time. I gathered my purse and stood, trying to appear merely unwell rather than terrified. Text me when you get home safely. Jacob insisted, his forehead creased with worry. I will. I promised, leaning down to kiss his cheek. As I straightened, I caught Amelia's expression. Was that relief I saw flicker across her features? Feel better, Darlene? She said, her voice honeyed with concern that didn't reach her eyes. With a final reassuring smile for Jacob, I turned and walked as calmly as I could toward the exit, my heart pounding with each step. Whatever awaited me in the parking lot, I prayed I wasn't making a terrible mistake by trusting an anonymous text message over the safety of the restaurant with my son. The evening air hit my face as I pushed through the restaurant's heavy doors, providing momentary relief from the tension inside. My hands trembled so badly, I had to clutch my purse against my body to hide it from anyone who might be watching. The parking lot stretched before me, half filled with cars, softly illuminated by vintage-style lampposts. Who had sent those messages? And why should I trust them? I scanned the area, looking for someone who might be watching for me. A couple walking toward the restaurant, a valet parking an expensive sports car, a man sitting alone in a sedan. Was he the one? He seemed to be watching the restaurant entrance. I took a deep breath and walked toward the area where I had parked my car, keeping my phone clutched in my hand, ready to call for help if necessary. Before I reached my vehicle, the man from the sedan approached, walking with purpose, but maintaining enough distance not to appear threatening. Mrs. Wilson, he asked in a low voice. Darlene Wilson. I stopped, my thumb hovering over the emergency call button on my phone. Who are you? Why did you send me those messages? The man was in his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair and the weathered face of someone who had seen too much. He reached slowly into his jacket, and I took a step back alarmed. "It's okay," he said quickly, producing not a weapon, but a leather wallet. He flipped it open to reveal a police badge and ID card. "Detective Frank Patterson, Financial Crimes Division. I apologize for the dramatic approach, but I needed to speak with you without your son or his wife present." I stared at his credentials, trying to process what was happening. Financial crimes, I don't understand. What does this have to do with my family? Detective Patterson glanced toward the restaurant. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately? My car, perhaps?" Still suspicious. I shook my head. "I would prefer to stay in public view, detective. There's a bench over there." He nodded, respecting my caution. We walked to the bench positioned near the restaurant's garden area, well lit but away from the entrance. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm investigating a series of sophisticated financial scams involving a woman we believe is currently going by the name Amelia Carter, your son's wife." The words hit me like a physical blow. "That's absurd," I said automatically, though even as I spoke I felt a chill of recognition at how some of my concerns about Amelia suddenly aligned with his accusation. "My daughter-in-law is not a criminal. My son has known her for 3 years." Detective Patterson's expression remained neutral professional. "We believe she's been operating under various aliases for at least 7 years. She targets successful young professionals, particularly those with substantial assets or inheritance pending. She's very patient, very thorough in her approach." "This is crazy," I muttered, though doubt was rapidly growing in my mind. "You must have the wrong person." "I understand your skepticism," he replied, pulling a thin folder from his jacket. "Take a look at these." He handed me several photographs. The first showed Amelia unmistakably, her despite different hair color and style, sitting at a cafe with a man I didn't recognize. The second showed her entering what appeared to be a bank, wearing business attire I had never seen her in. The third made my blood run cold, a wedding photo with a different man, not my son. "This was taken 4 years ago in Seattle," Detective Patterson explained. "The man is Michael Brennan, a software engineer. She was using the name Sarah Brennan then. Within 6 months of their marriage, his savings were cleaned out, investments liquidated, and she disappeared." My hands shook as I stared at the image. The woman was definitely Amelia, though her hair was blonde and cut in a sleek bob. Her smile, her eyes, the small birthmark near her collarbone, all identical. "There have been others," the detective continued. "Before Michael, there was David Harrington in San Diego. After Michael, Thomas Green in Denver. All successful men with similar profiles to your son. All left financially devastated." "Jacob," I whispered, feeling sick. "Does he know? Have you told him?" Detective Patterson shook his head. "We've been building our case carefully. These individuals are sophisticated. They have networks, contingency plans. If she suspects we're onto her, she'll disappear with whatever she's already managed to extract from your son's accounts." I thought of the expensive bracelet, the watch, the house, hunting for properties they couldn't possibly afford. "The trust fund," I said suddenly. "She mentioned Jacob's trust fund tonight. He gets access next month when he turns 33. The detective nodded, his expression grim. "That's likely her endgame. Based on our investigation of her previous victims, she typically accelerates her activities when a large sum becomes accessible. She'll transfer funds offshore where they're nearly impossible to recover, then vanish." "What do you need from me?" I asked, my shock transforming into determination to protect my son. "Information primarily. Has Jacob shared any financial documents with you? Joint account details, investment portfolios? Anything related to the trust fund?" I shook my head. "Jacob handles his finances privately, but he has mentioned some concerns recently. Comments about money being tight despite his promotion. That's consistent with her pattern. She gradually takes control of finances, creates artificial scarcity to explain disappearing funds." He handed me his card. If you think of anything or notice suspicious activity, call me directly. And Mrs. Wilson, this is critical. Do not confront Amelia or tell your son about our conversation yet. We need irrefutable evidence before we make a move. I took his card, my mind racing with implications. How did you know we would be at this restaurant tonight? A faint smile crossed his face. We've had Amelia under surveillance for 3 weeks. When she made reservations here, we saw an opportunity to contact you safely. I'm sorry for the alarming approach, but it was necessary. As the detective stood to leave, a thought struck me. Why me? Why not approach Jacob directly? In our experience with these cases, victims are often deeply manipulated emotionally and psychologically. They frequently refuse to believe allegations against their partners, warn them about the investigation, or even accelerate financial transfers to prove their trust. By contacting a concerned family member first, we have better success building a case while protecting the victim's assets. As I watched Detective Patterson walk back to his car, the weight of what I'd learned pressed down on me. My son's wife, the woman he loved and trusted, was potentially a practiced criminal who had left a trail of devastated men in her wake. And now I was the only one who could help stop her before Jacob became her next victim. The drive home was a blur. I gripped the steering wheel with white knuckles, my mind racing through every interaction I'd ever had with Amelia, searching for clues I might have missed. Small moments suddenly took on new significance. Her vague explanations about her past, the lack of childhood photos in their apartment, her careful deflection whenever personal history came up in conversation. There had been other signs too. Her insistence on attending financial meetings with Jacob's advisor, explaining it as wanting to learn more about investments. Her gradual takeover of their banking, which she had justified by claiming Jacob was too busy with his new position. Even her occasional comments undermining Jacob's confidence about money management, despite his natural aptitude for numbers. I remembered a conversation from their wedding reception when I had asked about her university experience. She had spoken confidently about professors and courses, but when another guest who had attended the same school joined our conversation, Amelia had quickly excused herself. At the time, I thought nothing of it. As I pulled into my driveway, the reality of my situation hit me full force. I was caught in an impossible position. If I told Jacob my suspicions without solid proof, he might not believe me. Worse, he might tell Amelia, giving her time to complete whatever scheme she had planned, and disappear. But saying nothing meant watching my son potentially lose everything he had worked for. Inside my house, I went straight to my computer. I searched for information about romance scams and financial predators, reading article after article about sophisticated operations that targeted successful individuals. The patterns described matched Amelia's behavior with disturbing precision. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, torn between maternal instinct and analytical caution. By morning, my eyes were gritty from lack of sleep, but my resolve had solidified. I would help Detective Patterson gather the evidence needed to protect my son, even if Jacob ended up hating me for it in the short term. Around 9, my doorbell rang. Detective Patterson stood on my porch looking as though he had slept as little as I had. He carried a leather portfolio and wore a grave expression. "I have more information," he said once I had invited him in and offered coffee. "Some of it is quite concerning." He spread several documents on my kitchen table. Bank statements showing large transfers from joint accounts bearing Jacob and Amelia's names to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. A timeline correlating with Amelia's previous relationships and the subsequent financial collapses of her partners. Most disturbing were photographs of Amelia under different names with the men Detective Patterson had mentioned last night. "We've traced at least $200,000 moved from your son's accounts over the past 4 months," he explained. "Small enough increments to avoid automatic fraud detection, large enough to build a substantial nest egg." I felt physically ill. 200,000, Jacob doesn't have that kind of money just sitting in accounts. Credit line advances second mortgages on their condo, possibly personal loans. These individuals are thorough in extracting every possible dollar. The trust fund, I whispered. It's worth over $1 million. Robert, my late husband, set it up for Jacob with his life insurance policy and some investments. Jacob gets full control on his birthday next month. Detective Patterson's expression tightened. That explains the timing. Based on surveillance and electronic monitoring we've legally obtained, we believe Amelia may be accelerating her timeline. Has Jacob mentioned any urgent investment opportunities recently? Something requiring quick decision-making or large sums? I shook my head, but then remembered Jacob's excitement about their house hunting. They're looking at houses well beyond what they should be able to afford, even with Jacob's promotion. Properties in the $1 million range. A common tactic: create excitement about a major purchase, then claim a need for bridge financing or a large down payment to secure it. The money goes into escrow accounts that aren't actually escrow accounts. I pushed away from the table, needing physical distance from the evidence of betrayal spread before me. What exactly do you need from me, detective? How can I help protect my son? Information is our best weapon right now. Anything you can learn about their current financial activities, pending transactions or documents Amelia might be preparing for Jacob to sign. He would never just sign away his trust fund, I insisted. Jacob is intelligent, careful with important decisions. Detective Patterson's expression was sympathetic but firm. Mrs. Wilson, in my 15 years investigating these cases, I've seen doctors, lawyers, even financial advisors fall victim to these scams. It's not about intelligence. These criminals are experts at emotional manipulation, at creating false urgency and exploiting trust. Your son believes he's signing papers to secure his future with a woman he loves, not signing away his financial security. I nodded, accepting the harsh truth. What's our next step? Continue normal interactions with both of them. See if you can arrange time alone with Jacob. Gently probe about their finances without raising suspicion. We're monitoring known associates of Amelia's previous identities who might be helping her prepare documentation. We believe we're close to having enough for an arrest, but we need to move carefully. As Detective Patterson gathered his materials, he paused, looking me directly in the eyes. One more thing, Mrs. Wilson. Our surveillance indicates Amelia has been meeting with a known document forger. We believe she's preparing to move very soon. Time is not on our side. After he left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at my phone. Finally, I picked it up and texted Jacob. Would love to have lunch, just the two of us this week. My treat to continue celebrating your promotion. His reply came quickly. Sounds great, Mom. How about tomorrow? Amelia has a spa appointment, so I'm on my own for lunch anyway. I responded with a suggested time and restaurant, then set my phone down. My heart but heavy with the deception I was now part of. But if playing this role meant saving my son from financial and emotional devastation, I would give the performance of my life. The small cafe I had chosen for lunch with Jacob was quiet and casual, a place we had frequented when he was in college. I arrived early, selecting a corner table that offered privacy for our conversation. When Jacob walked in, I was struck by how exhausted he looked, up close, without the dim lighting of the restaurant to mask the dark circles under his eyes. Mom. He greeted me with a warm hug. Are you feeling better? I was worried when you left so suddenly last night. Much better, I assured him, hating the lie, but knowing it was necessary. Just a passing thing. How are you? You look tired, sweetheart. Jacob sighed as he settled into his chair. Just working long hours with the new position. Lots of responsibility, lots of pressure to perform. After we ordered, I carefully steered the conversation toward their future plans, trying to sound merely interested rather than investigative. You and Amelia seemed excited about house hunting. Have you found anything promising? Jacob's face lit up. Actually, yes. There's this amazing property in Westlake Hills. 5 bedrooms, beautiful yard, exclusive neighborhood. Amelia fell in love with it immediately. That sounds wonderful, I said carefully, though it must be quite expensive for that area. A flicker of something worry perhaps crossed his face. It's definitely at the top of our budget, but Amelia says it's a solid investment that properties in that neighborhood have been appreciating rapidly. I nodded encouragingly. How are you planning to manage the financing? Those high-end properties usually require substantial down payments. Jacob shifted uncomfortably, confirming my suspicions that something was amiss. Well, that's the thing. We might need to get creative with the financing. Amelia has been handling most of our financial planning lately. She has a real knack for it, much better than me. This was exactly what Detective Patterson had described, the gradual ceding of financial control. Really, I always thought you were excellent with money management. You were certainly meticulous about saving during college. I guess I'm better with coding than banking, he said with a self-deprecating laugh that didn't sound like my son at all. Anyway, Amelia has found some investment opportunities that could help us afford the down payment. High return potential, but we need to move quickly. I kept my expression neutral, despite the alarm bells ringing in my head. What kind of investments? Some kind of private equity arrangement. I don't fully understand all the details, to be honest. But Amelia has done extensive research. I took a sip of water, using the moment to compose my next question carefully. That sounds complicated. Will you be using your savings for this investment? Jacob hesitated, then looked down at his plate. Actually, the trust fund from Dad would be perfect for this. It becomes fully accessible next month, and the timing works out well for the house purchase. There it was, the trust fund, just as Detective Patterson had predicted. I felt a cold knot of fear in my stomach. The entire trust, that seems like a lot to commit to a single investment. Not the entire amount, Jacob said quickly, but using it as collateral for the investment opportunity Amelia found. The returns would more than cover the house down payment, according to the prospectus. Have you discussed this with your financial advisor, the one who has been managing the trust? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. A flash of defensiveness crossed Jacob's face. Amelia thought we should get a second opinion. Her friend recommended someone with more experience in these types of investments. Every response confirmed what Detective Patterson had told me. Jacob was being skillfully manipulated, led step by step toward financial disaster. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders, to shake some sense into him, to tell him his wife was a con artist who had done this before. But I remembered the detective's warning that confronting Jacob directly might backfire catastrophically. Instead, I tried a gentler approach. Jacob, I know this is none of my business, but as your mother, I worry. Major financial decisions like this deserve careful consideration. Maybe we could meet with the advisor who's been managing the trust together, just to get his perspective. Jacob's expression hardened slightly. Mom, I appreciate your concern, but Amelia and I have discussed this extensively. We're not making this decision lightly. Of course not. I backpedaled, seeing I had pushed too far. I just want you to be happy and secure. His expression softened. I know you do, and I am happy. Amelia has been amazing through this whole promotion stress. She's handling so many details so I can focus on work. I'm lucky to have her. The rest of lunch passed, with safer topics, Jacob telling me about his new team at work, me sharing stories about my gardening adventures. But beneath the pleasant conversation, my mind was racing. Jacob was clearly already deep under Amelia's influence, trusting her completely with their financial future. And based on Detective Patterson's warning about the document forger, time was running dangerously short. After lunch, I made a split-second decision. Would it be all right if I stopped by later today to drop off some of my homemade lasagna? I made too much yesterday. Sure, Jacob said, though I'm not sure when Amelia will be back from her spa day. That's fine, I said casually. I can just leave it in your refrigerator if you're busy. I still have the spare key you gave me for emergencies. Jacob nodded, giving me the window of opportunity I needed. As we hugged goodbye, I felt a surge of protective determination. I might be breaking boundaries by entering their home while Amelia was out, but if it meant saving my son from disaster, I would do whatever was necessary. That afternoon, I drove to Jacob's condo building homemade lasagna in hand as my cover story. I used the emergency key he had given me years ago, letting myself in quietly. The condo was silent, confirming that Amelia had not yet returned from her supposed spa appointment. I moved quickly, uncertain how much time I had. Where would Amelia keep important financial documents? The home office seemed the obvious place to start. Inside, I found Jacob's desk neat and organized, exactly as he had always kept his spaces. Amelia's desk, however, was conspicuously clear, except for a few magazines and decorative items. Too clear, as if nothing of importance was ever left there. On instinct, I checked the closet in the guest bedroom, which they used for storage. Behind some winter coats, I found a locked briefcase. My heart raced. I couldn't open it, but its presence, hidden and secured, was telling. In the master bedroom, I noticed Amelia's laptop on her nightstand. It was password protected, of course, but next to it lay a leather portfolio with documents partially visible. I carefully slid one out, finding what appeared to be bank statements from an account I didn't recognize in Amelia's name only. Just as I was about to examine the documents more closely, I heard the front door unlock. In a panic, I quickly replaced the papers and hurried to the kitchen, placing the lasagna container on the counter as if I had just arrived to deliver it. "Darlene," Amelia's voice called out, surprise evident in her tone. "What are you doing here?" I turned, forcing a smile, trying to calm my pounding heart. "Oh, Amelia, I brought over some homemade lasagna for you and Jacob. He said it would be fine to use my emergency key since he wasn't sure when you'd be back." Amelia stood in the kitchen doorway, wearing yoga clothes rather than looking like she'd spent the day at a spa. Her eyes darted around the room, as if checking whether anything was disturbed. "How thoughtful," she said, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Jacob mentioned you had lunch together." "Yes, it was lovely catching up. I've missed our one-on-one time since he got so busy with the new position." I moved toward the door, eager to escape before she became suspicious. I should get going. Lots of gardening to do this afternoon. As I passed the guest bedroom, I noticed the door was slightly ajar, though I was certain I had closed it. Had Amelia already checked to see if her hidden briefcase was undisturbed? "Your hair looks nice," I commented, noticing it wasn't styled as it would be after a spa day. Was the spa enjoyable? A nearly imperceptible pause. "Very relaxing. I decided to take a yoga class afterward." I nodded and continued toward the front door. "Well, enjoy the lasagna. It's Jacob's favorite recipe." As I turned to say goodbye, I glimpsed something through the partially open closet near the entryway. A suitcase packed and ready tucked behind some shoe boxes. My blood ran cold, but I maintained my smile. "Have a wonderful afternoon, Amelia." Once in my car, I called Detective Patterson immediately. "I think she's planning to leave soon," I said without preamble. "There's a packed suitcase hidden in their front closet, financial documents I couldn't access properly, and a locked briefcase hidden in the guest room. This confirms our surveillance observations." He replied, his voice tense. "We've been tracking her movements. She met with a known associate this morning, not at a spa. We believe they may be finalizing whatever documentation she needs for the trust fund transfer." "What do we do now?" I asked, pulling away from Jacob's building, constantly checking my rearview mirror to ensure Amelia wasn't following me. "We continue monitoring, building our case. But Mrs. Wilson, based on this acceleration, we may need to move soon. If she contacts your son about urgent paperwork or meetings regarding the trust fund, please let me know immediately." I agreed, the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the image of that packed suitcase, ready for a quick escape once Amelia had secured what she came for: my son's inheritance and financial future. The call I had been dreading came just 2 days later. Jacob's voice on the phone sounded excited, but with an undercurrent of stress that a mother could not miss. "Mom, are you busy this evening?" Amelia and I have some papers to sign for the house, and I'd love your opinion. The seller's agent is pushing for a quick decision, since there are other interested buyers. My heart raced. Tonight, that seems very sudden for such a big decision. I know, but that's the real estate market these days. Strike while the iron is hot and all that. We need to secure the property with a significant deposit to take it off the market. I gripped the phone tighter. What time I'd be happy to come over? Around 7, Amelia's preparing dinner, and the agent is bringing the paperwork afterward. I'll be there. I promised, ending the call quickly so I could contact Detective Patterson. When I reached him, his response was immediate. This is the move we've been anticipating. Our surveillance shows Amelia met with the document forger again yesterday. We'll have officers in position, but we need to be careful about our approach. If they're using a real estate transaction as cover, we need to see what documents they're actually presenting to your son. What should I do? I asked, already gathering my purse and keys. Arrive as planned. Act normally. Try to see what documents Jacob is actually being asked to sign. If possible, delay any signatures until we can position our team. I'll be nearby and you'll have my direct line if anything seems imminent. The hours until 7 o'clock crawled by with excruciating slowness. I changed my outfit 3 times, unable to settle my mind, racing through scenarios. What if Jacob refused to listen? What if Amelia realized I was working with the police? What if we were wrong? And this was a legitimate real estate transaction after all. By the time I arrived at Jacob's condo, my nerves were stretched to breaking point. I texted Detective Patterson to confirm my arrival, then knocked on the door. Amelia answered, wearing an elegant dress and perfect makeup, as if this were indeed a special occasion. Darlene, so glad you could join us for this exciting moment. Jacob's just finishing up a work call. The condo smelled of garlic and herbs, and the dining table was beautifully set with candles and wine glasses. A perfect scene, like something from a home decoration magazine. Too perfect, perhaps. Something smells wonderful. I commented, following Amelia to the kitchen, where she was arranging appetizers on the platter. Just a simple pasta dish, she replied. The real celebration will be after we sign the papers. This house is absolutely perfect for us. Jacob emerged from the home office, greeting me with a warm hug. Mom, thanks for coming. I value your perspective on this. It's a big step. Dinner proceeded with apparent normalcy, though I noticed Amelia refilling Jacob's wine glass frequently while barely touching her own. The conversation centered around the house, its features, the neighborhood amenities, the potential for property value appreciation. Not once did Amelia mention the significant financial commitment or the methods they would use to finance it. Around 8, the doorbell rang. Amelia quickly rose to answer it. That must be Martin with the paperwork. Instead of the real estate agent, I expected a sleek, well-dressed man entered, carrying a leather portfolio similar to the one I had spotted in the bedroom. He introduced himself as Martin Weber, investment consultant, rather than real estate agent. Jacob looked momentarily confused. I thought we were signing papers for the house tonight. We are indirectly. Amelia smoothly interjected. Martin is handling the investment portion that will fund our down payment. Remember, we discussed this, the opportunity to leverage your trust fund for the significant returns that will make the house purchase possible. I watched my son's face, seeing confusion give way to hesitant acceptance. Whatever Amelia had previously discussed with him, it clearly hadn't been explained, as it was being presented now. Let's move to the dining table, Martin suggested. I'll walk you through everything. The 3 of them sat with me positioned slightly behind Jacob, where I could see the documents being presented. My phone was in my hand, Detective Patterson's number. Ready to dial, Martin opened his portfolio and began explaining what I immediately recognized as a complex wealth transfer scheme, rather than a legitimate investment. The documentation was designed to look professional, but contained provisions that would effectively give Amelia control over Jacob's trust fund assets. So, this investment pool requires access to the full trust as collateral. Jacob asked, frowning slightly, as he reviewed the papers. That seems excessive for a house down payment. It's standard procedure for this level of investment, Martin assured him smoothly. The returns are substantial enough to justify the security requirements, and as you can see on page 3, your principal is protected. It was all happening exactly as Detective Patterson had warned. I watched in horror as Jacob began reading through the document, his trust in Amelia, overriding the natural caution he would normally exercise in financial matters. I just need to understand exactly what I'm signing, Jacob said, still scanning the dense legal text. This seems different from what we discussed originally, Amelia. It's the same concept, just more formal language, she assured him, her hand on his arm. The important thing is securing the house before someone else does. Martin has another appointment tonight, so we should try to finalize this quickly. I couldn't remain silent any longer. Jacob, perhaps you should have your regular financial advisor review these documents before signing. This seems like a very significant commitment. Amelia's eyes flashed with annoyance before she masked it with a smile. Darlene, I appreciate your concern, but we've done our due diligence. This opportunity won't wait for additional reviews. Jacob looked up, caught between his wife's urgency and my caution. Mom does have a point. Maybe we should take a day to review everything thoroughly. Martin checked his watch with obvious impatience. Unfortunately, the investment pool closes tonight. We have other clients waiting to participate if you're not ready to commit. The pressure tactics were obvious to me, but I could see Jacob wavering. I stepped out of the room briefly, sending a quick text to Detective Patterson. They're pushing Jacob to sign trust fund documents now. Investment scheme, not house papers. His response was immediate. Stall if possible. Team moving into position. When I returned, Martin had placed a pen in Jacob's hand, and Amelia was pointing to signature lines on multiple pages. I had to act now. Jacob, I said firmly, I don't think you should sign these papers tonight. The room fell silent. Jacob looked up, startled by my tone. Mom, we've been planning this for weeks. The house, the investment opportunity. It's all coming together perfectly. Is it, I asked, moving to stand beside him, or is it coming together perfectly for someone else? Amelia's expression hardened. What exactly are you implying, Darlene? I took a deep breath, knowing I was about to change everything. I'm implying that these aren't legitimate investment documents. I'm suggesting that you, Amelia, are not who you claim to be. Jacob stood abruptly. Mom, what are you saying? Your mother is clearly upset, Amelia said quickly. Perhaps this isn't the right time for her to be here. It's exactly the right time, I countered, pulling out my phone. Because I believe you're attempting to defraud my son, just as you defrauded Michael Brennan in Seattle, David Harrington in San Diego, and Thomas Green in Denver. The color drained from Amelia's face. Martin began gathering the papers quickly. This is ridiculous. We should reschedule when family tensions aren't running so high. No, Jacob said, his voice shaking. What is she talking about, Amelia? Who are these people? Before she could answer, the front door burst open. Detective Patterson entered, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Martin Weber, Amelia Carter, please step away from the table. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. What followed was chaos. Martin attempted to flee toward the back of the condo, but was quickly apprehended. Amelia's calm facade crumbled as she realized she was trapped. Jacob stood frozen in shock, watching as officers handcuffed his wife. This is a mistake, Amelia insisted, looking imploringly at Jacob. Your mother has poisoned them against me. Tell them, Jacob. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Jacob turned to Detective Patterson, his voice barely audible. What evidence do you have? The detective nodded to one of the officers, who produced a folder. Financial records showing transfers from joint accounts to offshore holdings. Documentation of previous identities and victims. Surveillance of meetings with known forgers and fraud accomplices. As the evidence was laid out, I watched my son's world collapse. His face shifted from disbelief to shock to devastation as the truth became undeniable. The woman he had loved, had planned a future with, had trusted completely, was a sophisticated criminal who had targeted him from the beginning. Amelia made one last desperate attempt. Jacob, they're lying. It's your mother. She's always been jealous of our relationship. She's fabricated all of this. Jacob looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time without the filter of manipulation. Then explain the offshore accounts, Amelia. Explain why our savings have been disappearing despite my promotion. Explain who Sarah Brennan is and why she has your face in a wedding photo with another man. When she couldn't answer, when her excuses faltered, Jacob turned away, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As the officers led Amelia and Martin out, she turned back one last time. "You'll never prove anything," she hissed at Detective Patterson. "I've done this before, and I'll walk again." The detective's response was measured. "Not this time. We've been building this case for months. Your previous victims have all identified you. The paper trail is complete." After they left, Jacob collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands. I sat beside him, placing a gentle hand on his back, feeling his body shake with silent sobs. No words seemed adequate for the betrayal he had experienced. So I simply sat with him, providing the same comfort I had when he was a child with skinned knees or broken toys. Except this wound went far deeper than any childhood injury. "I was going to sign those papers," he finally whispered. "I would have signed everything over to her." "But you didn't?" I reminded him softly. "You hesitated. You wanted to understand what you were signing. That saved you." He looked up, his eyes red. "How did you know? How long have you known?" I explained about Detective Patterson's approach at the restaurant, the evidence he had shared, and my own growing suspicions over recent months. I apologized for keeping it from him, for investigating behind his back. "I wanted to tell you immediately," I admitted, "but the detective warned me that confronting you directly might backfire. That Amelia would convince you it was all lies, and you might end up transferring funds even faster to prove your trust in her." Jacob nodded slowly, recognizing the truth in this assessment. "I probably wouldn't have believed you," he admitted. "She had me completely convinced. I thought she loved me." The pain in his voice broke my heart. "I know, sweetheart. I know." That night, I stayed in Jacob's guest room, unwilling to leave him alone with his shattered reality. In the morning, Detective Patterson returned to take Jacob's statement and explain the next steps in the legal process. The documents Jacob had nearly signed would have given Amelia access to his entire trust fund, with provisions allowing immediate overseas transfers that would have been nearly impossible to recover. "You're lucky," the detective told him. "Most victims don't discover the fraud until after their accounts are emptied. Your mother's intervention saved your financial future." Jacob looked at me, his eyes still haunted, but with a glimmer of gratitude breaking through the pain. "She's always been there when it mattered most." The months following Amelia's arrest were among the most difficult of Jacob's life, and by extension, mine as well. The legal proceedings revealed the full extent of her criminal activities, a sophisticated network of fraud that had victimized at least 7 men before Jacob. Her real name, as it turned out, was Catherine Mercer, with a history of minor fraud charges dating back to her early 20s. Jacob fell into a deep depression, questioning everything about his relationship and his own judgment. How could he have been so thoroughly deceived? What had been real, if anything? The self-recrimination was painful to witness. I temporarily moved into his spare bedroom, worried about leaving him alone in such a vulnerable state. The financial aftermath was complicated, but not as devastating as it could have been. Detective Patterson's team helped recover some of the money Amelia had already transferred from Jacob's accounts. The trust fund remained secure, though Jacob couldn't bring himself to touch it, associating it now with betrayal and manipulation. "I should have seen through her," he said repeatedly during those dark first weeks. "I'm supposed to be intelligent, analytical. How did I miss all the signs?" "Because she was an expert at what she did." I reminded him gently. And because you loved her. Love makes us vulnerable in ways that have nothing to do with intelligence. Gradually, with the help of a therapist specializing in trauma and betrayal, Jacob began to understand how he had been manipulated. The isolation from friends, the subtle undermining of his confidence, the creation of financial dependence, all classic tactics of emotional control that had made him susceptible to the financial fraud. As spring turned to summer, Jacob started to rebuild his life. He sold the condo, unable to live with the memories it contained, and found a smaller apartment closer to my home. He immersed himself in work, finding solace in the concrete challenges of coding and system design. Slowly, he began socializing again, reconnecting with friends who had been gradually sidelined during his relationship with Amelia. Detective Patterson surprisingly became something of a friend to us both. He checked in regularly, offering updates on the legal proceedings and eventually testimony that helped ensure Amelia received a substantial prison sentence. His experience with similar cases provided Jacob with context that helped him feel less foolish, less singularly targeted. For my part, I found unexpected purpose in the aftermath of the ordeal. I joined a support group for families of fraud victims, discovering that my experience was far from unique. Many parents, siblings, and friends had watched loved ones fall victim to sophisticated scams, often feeling helpless to intervene. My background in education proved valuable, and I began volunteering with the Senior Center, teaching workshops on recognizing and avoiding financial predators. 1 year after that fateful dinner, Jacob and I returned to the same restaurant. A deliberate choice, his idea to reclaim the space that had been the setting for such deception. "I never properly thanked you," he said, as we sat at a table far from where we had dined with Amelia. "I was so angry at first, not just at her, but at you too for investigating behind my back." "I know," I acknowledged. "I hated keeping things from you. But you saved me from financial ruin," he continued. "More than that, you saved me from years of manipulation and lies. If you hadn't intercepted when you did, who knows how much more damage she would have done." I reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "That's what mothers do. We protect our children even when they're grown men with successful careers." Jacob smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes, something I had seen too rarely in recent months. "I'm dating again, by the way, very cautiously. Her name is Leah. She's a librarian I met at that book club Dave convinced me to join. I'd like you to meet her, but you want to take things slowly, get to know her on your own terms." I finished for him. "That sounds perfectly reasonable. I'm checking references this time," he added with a wry laugh, "and keeping my financial information to myself, at least for the foreseeable future. Healthy boundaries are important in any relationship," I agreed. "Just don't let what Amelia did close you off from the possibility of real connection. Not everyone has ulterior motives." Jacob nodded thoughtfully. "That's what my therapist says too. It's a balance, learning to trust again while still protecting myself." As we finished our dinner, I marveled at my son's resilience. The past year had tested him in ways neither of us could have imagined. Yet here he was, wounded, but healing, cautious, but not bitter. The ordeal had changed him, as trauma inevitably does, but it hadn't broken his capacity for hope or connection. For myself, I had discovered strengths I didn't know I possessed. The courage to trust a stranger's warning text, the determination to investigate despite uncertainty, the willingness to risk my son's anger to protect him from harm. Motherhood had always defined a central part of my identity, but now I understood its dimensions more fully. Love wasn't just nurturing and supporting, it was also fighting fiercely, when necessary, standing firm against threats, even when they came disguised in beautiful packaging and convincing lies. As we walked to the parking lot, Jacob paused under the same lamppost where I had first met Detective Patterson. "Life takes such unexpected turns," he mused. "A year ago, I thought I knew exactly where my future was headed. Now everything is different, and yet somehow I think I'm stronger for having gone through this. I nodded, looking at my son with pride. That's how we grow, Jacob. Not through the easy, predictable paths, but through the challenges that force us to discover who we truly are. He hugged me then, a long, tight embrace that spoke volumes. When he pulled away, I saw in his eyes not just the wounded man who had endured betrayal, but the resilient boy I had raised, the one who had weathered his father's death and emerged compassionate rather than bitter, the one who had always found his way through difficulties with intelligence and heart. Thank you, Mom, he said simply, for everything. As we drove our separate ways home that night, I reflected on the extraordinary journey we had traveled. The mysterious text message that had started it all had led us through darkness and pain, but also toward truth and eventually healing. I had learned that maternal instinct was sometimes more trustworthy than appearances, that courage often meant acting despite uncertainty, and that love, real love, would always find its way toward protection and truth even when the path there was frightening and unclear. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect someone you love, even when they might not understand your actions? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. And remember, sometimes the most important text message you will ever receive is the one that seems the most disruptive to your comfortable reality. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you always find the courage to act on your instincts when they are trying to protect those you love.